How's it going, Reef Keepers? So I thought that the last video I made would be like the last video I had in me today, but I think I have one more in me. I talked about the Reef Beef podcast at a little bit of length in the last video, and one other point that was brought up in the Reef Beef podcast kind of stood out to me, and I'm glad it was said by Rich Ross, I think, initially, and I'm glad that he said it. He said, people who get angry about delicate saltwater reef equipment failing and go scream at companies and like smear names on forums and you know like that is a weird place to live, I think is how he put it. I agree with that, right? Like largely. I think that is a weird place to live because it is saltwater, right? I mean, the Navy has to pull out aircraft carriers and dry dock them, and I'm sure what they paint on the hulls of aircraft carriers is salt resistant at the very least. So, if the US Navy has to basically ground ships for regular maintenance in a constant rotation to fight salt water, it logically tracks to my mind that like our equipment being consumer grade equipment that is around saltwater, despite it being expensive, we're going to run into problems, right? And I will say I think probably the one, you know, like caveat that I'll make is if you put something on your tank and you spend a lot of money on it and it dies in like a week, that's a little different, right? So like, or if it comes out of the box broken and it just doesn't even turn on or whatever, it really shakes your faith that like it right out of the gate or within a few days, it's just not working. But I'll tell you, recently, like I hear all the time, Trident this, Trident that, FU Neptune, FU Aperture, the Trident. It's the worst, Granted, it's not perfect. Nothing that is created in reef keeping is. Some products solve a whole litany of problems that another product had, but then in solving those problems, more problems arise, right? And so you find out new problems where you thought you were gonna, get a better product. I think every reef product generally has problems. It just does. It's really hard, especially like technology around saltwater in a niche hobby. These companies are not Apple Incorporated, right? So I think we hold them to a really high standard because it does cost a lot of money and we really put up, there's a lot at stake for this stuff working. However, I do kind of feel like Rich Ross is right when it comes to, look, if you had a Trident for 3 years and then it stops working, like, is the best course of action to just start screaming at Neptune and freaking out? And this isn't me defending Neptune per se. If the Maven was out and people were screaming at Hydros because one of their lines on their Maven wasn't functioning or whatever, or some little doser inside of it wasn't functioning after a year, I don't condone anyone screaming at Coral View either, or screaming at anybody over something like that for that matter. This stuff, it is just not going to be perfect. It's extremely complicated technology. For all of us, we couldn't design and create this stuff. So like, if something gets gummed up or stuck on or stuck off in something like a Trident, especially after like a year or two or three, or in my case recently, 4.5, pushing 5 years. I think it is 4 years I had the Trident before it had a major problem. It didn't have one issue. Heck, I didn't shut this thing down properly and I moved from Ohio to here and it still worked lights out when I plugged it back in. And after 4 years, maybe a little longer, it finally was like, I just can't pull reagent anymore. And I troubleshot the whole thing and took it all apart. I couldn't figure it out, and so I had to pay the $150 to send it to Aperture. No fun, right? I grumbled to myself under my breath, and dang it, But was I furious at Neptune because I got 4 years of quality auto testing out of that? I never had like problems with the parameters or anything. After 4 years, no, I'm not going to be mad about spending $150 to keep, a premium piece of reefing equipment going, right? I mean, that to me was actually, decently spent money to get that thing repaired and keep it working. But I see people on the forums all the time, like, again, like 3, 4 years, my Trident won't pull reagent A. Just freaking out. So furious. I'm tanking my whole Neptune system and going to Hydros right now, today. Here, I'm posting it for sale tonight. It's like, look, first of all, how can you get so mad about something like that? I think it's like, I mean, if you want to, go ahead. I mean, I'm not going to like try to stop you, but I will say it feels unhealthy. It feels really like you're putting a lot of stress and strain on yourself over something that you can't control, and like despite probably the best efforts of whatever company your product's from, their quality control couldn't catch or whatever. It honestly, after a few years, it's probably not their fault, right? It's just like, these things happen. Okay. Oh, you get to see the tank with the lights, with the Quanta Pros off. That's cool. So basically, this video, it's just kind of a fun pet video for me to make, about this thing. I'm sure that like in the reptile hobby, there are guys who get a $50 lamp or whatever, and it breaks, and they call and scream at a company, at ZoomEd or whatever. I'm sure that happens too. I just have to believe, though, that like the delicate nature of our systems and the reef tax on so many products, the ridiculous cost of things, or at least it feels ridiculous a lot of time, I have to believe that that is having an impact on the amount of people. Plus, by the way, the extremely technical nature of this stuff. Not that many people are good naturally with technology. So, with that in mind, the frustration level's got to be higher. The stakes are higher. I gotta imagine people call these companies absolutely freaking out, nailing them to the wall, screaming at them, smearing them on social media, and I'm just like, look, you're having this problem. What I always think to myself, as someone who worked, by the way, in customer service for many years, I think to myself, the chances that the problem lies with the user on this have to be astronomically high. And a lot of the hotheads screaming on there are like, the way that they're going about their utilization of language and their description of the problems, which show like ignorance and voids in their knowledge as they're trying to explain it. I'm just like, no way. Like, no way this is actually, 100% on whatever company you're demonizing today. So I use Neptune because like things go wrong with controllers a lot, and I have a Neptune Apex, right? So it's an easy one. So I'm in all the Neptune groups, I'm on the Neptune forums, I see the rage. And I just want to say, like, if that's you and you want to do it, go for it. I can't stop you. But if that's you and you're like, I wish I didn't get so mad, grab onto that. Don't be so mad, right? This happens to everybody. It just does. There's so many things that I have stumbled through and cursed and broken as I tried to build all of this, right? Like, this is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot for anybody. It's a lot for experienced people. So, I don't know what the purpose of this video is, other than to say, just breathe. Like, it's going to be all right. So, I know we've all been there. We've all been furious, but it probably isn't worth it. That's it. Have a good one, guys.